You're listening to His Empire of Dirt by Pearlandpine. Chapter 22. Jeremy Fitzgerald likes to skateboard. Christ, Dad muttered under his breath, reading from a book. Mike was drawing in his sketch room on the couch, and when the music outside kept up, Dad slammed his book shut and dropped his glasses he had begrudgingly begun wearing so that he no longer had to ask Mike what the fine print on some of his important documents said, from his face. "Michael, go outside and tell that brat to turn that damn music off." "Okay, Dad." If Mike was honest with himself, things had been horrifically decent between him and his old man. Being alone together had not been the worst time in his life, but it had. Because he missed everyone, and he deserved this pain so badly. During the day, Dad poured all of his time into the diner and animatronics and Uncle Henry. In turn, Mike saw Uncle Henry more than ever, and being in the presence of his favorite person in the world was immensely soothing. At night, when Uncle Henry went home, sometimes he didn't. He stayed in the house, and Mike, going to bed early, wondered what he and Dad talked about in the midst of the night. Dad would lead Mike into the study, drunkenly muttering to himself or instructing Mike on things he could not comprehend. He still didn't really understand what remnant was, despite Dad's various definitions. Ultimately, with a strained smile, Dad explained, "It's your soul, Michael. It makes you human. Makes you alive. You took that from all of them. You understand, yeah?" So, Mike understood what remnant was after all. There were a few unspoken rules between him and Dad. Number 1, do not mention death. This included, but was not limited to, speaking about Mom, Evan, and Lizzie. Once Mike was crying in his room, because it was Mother's Day, and Dad demanded, "Why the hell are you doing that?" And Mike had meekly explained the situation. And Dad did not scoff, nor did he scold him. Instead, he had shut the door, and in the morning, pretending the situation had never happened. Number 2, lie to Uncle Henry. Never mention remnant. Never mention Charlotte. Never, ever tell him that Mike and Dad were alone together. Number 3, obey Dad. This went without saying. If Mike diligently followed these few testaments, and of course he did, he couldn't disappoint the person he loved most in the world, then his life was more or less easy. He was dumb, but he was smart enough to comprehend the fact that he was very ludicrously rich, so he at least went to bed with heat and a blanket and a full stomach. Dad placated him by buying him new sketchbooks and even letting Mike go to the shop with him. Maybe being alone together with Dad was the best thing that ever could have happened to the both of them. After all, Mike didn't deserve to have a good mom or siblings that were his friends. And he just barely deserved to not get hit by his father any longer. Dad didn't hit him anymore. Wasn't that fantastic? It's a trick. It's gonna kill you when you least expect it, you fucking idiot. Lately, too, this morning excluded, Dad had been in such a great mood. It was a few months into 1985, and Dad continually preached that this would be the greatest year for the Afton family. Mike would witness him downstairs. The record player turned on, dancing to himself. Maybe he was pretending Mom was there. And there would always be a knife in his hand. One day, Dad held the knife up to Mike's throat and drew a bit of blood, and he had laughed, his eyes vacant, and said, "Don't worry, Michael. Soon you'll never die." Mike didn't understand what this had meant. At least not yet. Otherwise, Mike was receiving safety and comfort that he had never received before from his father in his entire life. He was wise enough to know that it was an act. Dad didn't love him, because he didn't deserve a father that loved him. But Mike would be obedient, and he would fight tooth and nail for scraps of his father's attention. He was resolved in the idea that if Dad told him to raise the world, if Dad told him to kill someone, he would do it. Because Dad was the smartest person in the world. And he just wanted to make his father happy. Mike set his sketchbook down on the table, put on his sneakers, and headed outside. In the middle of the street was a boy on a skateboard, a boombox blasting Pink Floyd situated beside him. He looked to be about Mike's age, 15. The boy had scraped elbows and knees, likely sustained from repeatedly falling over from his board. Now, he was kicking it between each foot, causing it to spin in the air before it crashed back down onto the street. He had dirty blonde hair and green eyes like seaweed, and he wore a baseball cap backwards and wore a bright blue windbreaker. Mike narrowed his eyes. This was the kind of person that Dad told him to stay away from. But if he couldn't, at least look down on. This was probably the kind of person that never had to fight for anything in his life. Not like Dad had. But Mike didn't quite know what Dad ever had to fight for. Not like Mike had to. Mike could tell this from the boy's childish grin and lazy attitude. "Hey!" Mike called over the music. When the boy didn't reply, either out of ignorance or range of hearing, Mike stomped up to him and yelled, "Hey!" "Oh, hi." The boy walked over to the boombox and turned it down, but didn't pause it, leaving the music a background for the impending conversation. "I'm Jeremy. What's your name?" Mike? Mike stammered, because he wasn't used to people asking his name. Everyone knew who he was. Child murderer. Oh, but the poor boy lost his mother and sister. Thank God his father's there for him. What a wonderful man, that Mr. Afton. "Listen, I live there." Mike pointed to his big house. "And your music is bothering my dad." "Really? Why?" "It's too loud." "Really? I had no idea, honest. I'll keep it down." "You should just go somewhere else." Jeremy shrugged. "Sorry, but no. This is like the only street in town that doesn't have like 1,000,000 potholes in it. So, yeah, no. I'm gonna stay here, but I'll keep the music down." "Remnant Michael is most potent in young adults. Children, even." Thinking of this, and thinking of how Dad hated people like Jeremy, Mike paled. He didn't like the kid. Or maybe he did, he didn't know, because he never knew anything. But that didn't mean he wanted Dad to hurt him. "No. Seriously," Mike said, his voice low as if Dad could hear him. "You shouldn't skate here." "It's okay. I've already got hella scrapes already." Jeremy demonstrated this by falling unceremoniously off the board and nearly cracking his head against the street. When he giggled and bared his teeth, Mike saw that there was a gap between his two front teeth, and that there were light freckles on his tan face. And Mike thought he could find constellations between them if he tried hard enough. What? You don't skate? No. I don't. What do you do? I draw, I guess. An artist? Wicked! Mike swallowed down air. No one, not even teachers, asked about him anymore. People only tolerated him because they adored Henry and were probably scared of Dad. At least a little bit. The two most important people in town were linked with the most hated, and thus the latter was allowed to exist at least semi-peacefully. Really, he wasn't sure how to talk to people anymore. You must be new here, he rasped out, scratching the back of his neck. Totally, yeah. My old man just got a new job close by, and the schools are good. Or, so my mom says. I haven't met anyone yet. You seem sweet, though. Mike, right? Listen, Mike, you skate? You already asked me that. No. Oh, sorry. Jeremy balanced himself on his board once more. My mom says I've got too many thoughts, but my dad says they just go by too quick for me to listen. Million words a minute. I like it, though. Why waste your time picking words when you could just say 'em all? Oh, yeah, Dad would fucking hate Jeremy, Mike thought. And with this, Mike was fascinated by the boy. He had hardly seen anyone else be the subject of his father's unbridled rage, and the masochistic part of him wanted to witness it. Would Dad tear into Jeremy like he had to Mike when Mike stained the back seat of the Thunderbird? After his heart swelled with these thoughts, Mike felt immensely guilty. Jeremy hadn't done anything wrong. At least, nothing wrong other than embrace the world's most hated little boy. Anyway, what grade are you in? I'm a sophomore. Radical, me too! Jeremy talked like the kids on sitcoms, Mike thought. Like he hadn't an original thought in his head. Oh yeah, definitely Dad would kill this kid if he was his son. We should be friends. Oh, you don't want to be friends with me. And why not? Because... Mike swallowed down his tears. No reason. Okay, cool. Let's be friends then. How about, you teach me how to draw, and I'll teach you how to skate. Deal! Jeremy hopped off his skateboard and coerced Mike onto it. Stop! What the hell are you... It's easy. Well, it's not, but I'm here. Don't worry. Jeremy held Mike's shoulders as Mike meagerly kicked forward. Yeah, you got it. You're a natural. Michael! Dad suddenly yelled from the doorway, having opened the door and had been observing the sight for God knows how long. Inside, now! Oh, already? Bogus. Mike's stomach tumbled at how loudly Jeremy had spoken. Regardless, though, the blond boy ecstatically waved to Mike's father. Yo, Mr. Mike's dad! Nice to meet you. Dad's eye twitched, and Mike almost laughed. But Jeremy did. Now, Michael. Yeah, Dad. I'm coming. Mike hopped off the skateboard and turned to Jeremy. Seriously, you should keep your music down. Will do. Hey, I'll look for you in school tomorrow for my drawing lesson, all right? Mike just really needs a friend. Okay, Jeremy. Jeremy continued skating outside as Mike hurried inside. He Said he'll keep it down, Mike told his father, to which his father tisked and continued reading his book. What are you reading? Dad pushed his cheek out with his tongue, as if annoyed by the prospect of being asked about something about himself by his only son. After a moment, though, Dad lifted the book for Mike to see. In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. Mike nodded, unsure where to bring the conversation after that. After a moment, Dad looked up. His grey eyes slitted between his glasses, and said, Michael, I have much business to attend to in the next few weeks. I need you to be ready, yeah? Then Dad smiled, warmly, completely unlike himself. It's for Mom, Evan and Elizabeth. With him breaking one of his few rules, Mike gasped, but he found himself eagerly nodding. Instead of thinking of this, though, Mike was thinking about Jeremy, and he was shocked to find that something other than the Afton family was in his mind. Jeremy found Mike in the cafeteria. Mike sat by himself, picking at his PB&J, only eating because Dad said that he needed to be big and strong. Yo, Mike, Jeremy said, plopping his plastic tray onto the table. Then, Jeremy scowled. Some people were saying some totally bogus stuff about you, man. Mike paled. He was dreading this part. Everything they say is right, you know. You won't have a life if you become friends with me. Jeremy laughed a bit. Ha! Nah, man, they were saying you killed your old brother? I mean, how ridiculous is... It's true. There was silence for a bit, before Jeremy chomped on his apple. Okay. I mean, it was an accident. I think you're nice, Mike. Believe it or not. I really do want to learn how to draw, you know. Jeremy, stop. You could be friends with anyone. Don't talk to me anymore. Mike grabbed his food and stomped away, trying to save someone from his presence. And he ate his sandwiches in the bathroom, crying on the toilet, boxing his head with his hands and wishing that Dad would make the bad, terrible thoughts go away. Damn it! Is he back again? Ruining my goddamn mood. Well, what's wrong? Oh, it's this brat friend of Michael's. He's not my friend. Uncle Henry laughed. He's just a kid, Will. Let him have his fun. Dad scoffed, only untensing his shoulders when Uncle Henry rested his hands on one of them. Despite Uncle Henry's calm demeanor, there were bags under his eyes, and he was getting skinnier. Mike hated to admit it, but Uncle Henry would probably be dead of sadness if Dad didn't coax him to life. Michael, go tell him to bugger off. I'm sick of him. Mike weakly inhaled. His name is Jeremy. Well, Dad rolled his eyes, and Henry furrowed his brow at him. Tell Jeremy to get the hell out of here. There was a sharp knocking at the door, and before Dad could open it, Mike rushed up to it. Mike, hi. Mike lowered his voice. Jeremy, I told you to leave me alone. I'm here for my drawing lesson. He invited himself in without anyone offering. Uncle Henry giddily waved, stood, and offered Jeremy his hand to shake, and Jeremy took it, beaming. Henry Emily, young man. You Mike's friend? Yes, sir. Jeremy Fitzgerald, with a Z. Mike blushed scarlet and wanted to crawl into a hole and hide. Jeremy withdrew a crappy notebook from his waistband and gestured it to Mike. He's gonna teach me how to draw. He's really good. Mike didn't know how Jeremy came upon this conclusion, because they had known each other for less than a week, and Jeremy had never seen him sketch anything before. Hi, Mr. Mike's dad. Dad tisked, narrowing his eyes at Jeremy like a lion to a limping fawn. And then he stood, towering over the boy, placing his hands behind his back and snarling out a smile. "Hello, Mr. Fitzgerald." Jeremy and Uncle Henry were oblivious to this dangerous milieu, so Mike mercifully grabbed Jeremy by the hand and led him into his room, slamming the door shut behind him. Jeremy whistled. "Radical posters, man." "Jeremy," Mike scolded, pulling at his hair, "you ought to leave me alone. What everyone said is true, okay? Get it through your thick skull. You should not want to be friends with me." Jeremy shrugged, and then, breaking his facade, he frowned. He looked up at Mike through strands of blondness and said, "I really do hate to see people alone, Mike, even if it's someone like you that thinks they deserve it. I used to get bullied a lot, at my old school. It's another reason we moved towns. Listen, if you look at it objectively, like I can, what happened was an accident. It was 2 years ago. The only person that should still feel bad about it is you. And I don't even think you feel bad about it for the right reasons. You don't even know me." "Okay. Can I get to know you?" "Why?" Jeremy toothily grinned. "I told you. I want to learn how to draw." "I don't even think you feel bad about it for the right reasons." There are right ways to feel bad?" Mike muttered. "Well, yeah. When my grandpa died, I felt so bad. Like I wanted to punch a wall and just cry a lot and... Oh crap, Mike, you okay?" Mike had begun crying before he could help it, sinking to the floor. I didn't," he said between hiccups, get to say goodbye." Hey, Mike. It's all right, hey." The two sat on the floor together. These two boys that hardly knew each other. One boy crying, another comforting. And soon, they draw together. Mike spent a few weeks with Jeremy. And holy crap, it felt so nice to have a friend. Eventually, Mike was able to balance all by himself on Jeremy's skateboard, able to kick a few feet without falling on his ass. "Uncle Henry, look!" Mike exclaimed, kicking off and sailing down the sidewalk. "Brilliant, Mike!" Uncle Henry clapped his hands together. He jostled Dad on the shoulder and pointed to Mike as if the boy was discovering the cure to every disease in the world. Look at him go, Will!" Dad's arms were folded across his chest as he observed the sight. Mike noticed this and startled. And then he crossed a crack on the sidewalk, falling and flailing onto his back. "Ouch! Oh, bummer, man." Jeremy raced over to him and withdrew a handy band-aid from his pocket. He stuck out his tongue, as he tended to do when he was consumed with concentration, and applied the band-aid to Mike's newly scraped knee. When Jeremy's fingers brushed against Mike's skin, Mike unconsciously flushed with red. "Better? But better," he stuttered. And he didn't know why. But he thought that Jeremy was just about the cutest person he'd ever seen. And he shoved the nice thought down before he could truly analyze it. He turned to his father, because he would always turn to his father, and examined his expression. He couldn't read what was behind Dad's fake smile, but he thought that there was something sad there. But otherwise it was unrecognizable. "Jeremy," Mike whispered, "thank you for being my friend." Jeremy beamed. "Thanks for being mine, Mike." It was raining that night. Dad was dancing, singing to himself. I did it my way, he sang, humming the rest. He threw on his overcoat and spun on his heel. Michael, he stated, a smile gracing his face. I'm going out. Really, Dad? It's late. And it's raining. Yes. Don't question me again. Sorry. I just get worried. Oh, Mike. Dad approached him, knelt on one knee, and smiled down upon him. Today is gonna be a fantastic night for us, yeah? You must be here when I get home. Make sure you are feeling decent, my son. Okay. Hey, Dad, can I ask you something before you leave? Dad's smile flickered for a moment. What? I really like Jeremy, and Mike looked at his feet. Is it okay for me to have a friend? Oh, Michael. Dad grinned tightly. The only person you need in this life is your family. Everyone else is irrelevant. But he's nice to me. Obviously, Mike. He's trash, and you are not. That's the only way scum like that grows in this world. Attaching to people bigger than them, and dragging them down the ladder to their pathetic level. Then, Dad's smile grew into something hideous, something horrifying. Tonight is going to be the best night of our lives, Mike. And Dad left. And he came back later. Of course he did. But he didn't, really. He never really came back again. Something else came back. It was someone that Dad had always wanted to be. Mike thought he was living with the monster. He was wrong. He was living with the cage the monster was in. The monster, purple and covered in blood, grey eyes alit in something horrible, was so much worse. Mike was worried sick. It was thundering like crazy outside, and the Thunderbird didn't drive exceptionally well in the rain. He paced about the house, not listening to music, not drawing, only praying to things he didn't believe in that his dad would be okay. He couldn't live without his father. Dad was his entire life. Dad was always right. Jeremy didn't matter. Dad mattered. Dad was all that was important. As these thoughts raced through Mike's head, the front door rattled against its hinges and blew open. Mike yelped, and standing in the doorway, illuminated by lightning, was Dad, and his black leather gloves were coated in blood, and the knife in his steady hand was so sharp, and he was so happy. Happy like Mike had never seen. Dad? Michael! Come here. It was hypnotic, almost, the way Dad ordered him around. Mike obeyed. He always obeyed, and trudged across the living room, following Dad into the garage. Apparently, when Mike wasn't there, Dad had set up a chair with leather straps, a few monitors blinking to life. Dad set the knife down on the workbench and escorted Mike to the chair. Without a word, He bound Mike's hands and legs to the chair with the straps. Dad, what are you...
Shh, 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 my son.
Dad's smile was so terrifying that Mike wanted to pass out from pure fear.
You're gonna do something wonderful for me, yeah?
Okay.
You're gonna bear through the pain, yeah? You're gonna be my control. Right. If this works, then I will be able to inject myself, and then we can bring back Mom and Elizabeth and Evan. Don't you want that more than anything?
Before Mike could answer, Dad grabbed a rag from the workbench, ordered him to open his mouth, and stuffed it into Mike's mouth.
Scream if you must, Mike. Look at me, eh? Blink twice for yes.
Mike did not note that Dad did not give him a translation for no.
Do you love me, my son?
Mike blinked twice.
Do you trust me?
2 blinks.
Do you want to live forever?
No, I don't want to live at all. Mike blinked twice, because he had no choice. Dad's smile was so wide that it swallowed up everything on his face, except for the grey spark in his eyes.
Good, 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 good. Obedient son of mine. We're gonna be alone together forever, Michael.
But what about Mom and... Mike's thoughts were interjected by Dad withdrawing a syringe from his pocket, flicking the glass and pricking it up against Mike's neck, right below his jawline. Mike hadn't seen it before, but a record player in the back of the garage began playing. Yes, there were times, I'm sure you knew, when I bit off more than I could chew. Mike began screaming. Dad plunged the syringe into his skin, and pain rocketed across his body. His screams were muffled by the rag, but just barely. The thunder and music drowned out his cries from the outside world. He thrashed against his restraints, tears falling from his face like the rain fell outside. But through it all, when there was doubt, I ate it up and spit it out. I faced it all and I stood tall and did it my way.
Dad, why are you doing this? I'm sorry. Did I do something wrong? I tried to be good. I won't talk to Jeremy anymore. I'll lie to Uncle Henry. I only care about the Hamptons. I'll be good. I'll be good. I'm so sorry. Did I do something wrong? Of course you did something wrong. You killed your old brother, you fucking idiotic murderer. If this kills you, then you deserve it. I don't want Dad to be alone.
Mike bellowed in pain, his veins igniting with some sort of muted purple color. He stared in horror at the sight, wishing it was a nightmare, but it wasn't. The pain was so real, realer than anything he had ever felt before. For what is a man? What has he got? If not himself, then he has not. The monitors behind him began whirring to life. Dad placed the back of his hand on Mike's forehead, his eyes wide with fever and insanity.
Mike, you are doing so well. It's almost done. Just keep remembering all of this pain.
Dad leaned in close, and Mike stopped screaming for a moment, waiting for comfort that he knew would never come.
You deserve all of it.
I deserve all of it.
I deserve all of it,
he said, but not really, because he was still being muzzled, and his screams were still so much louder. Dad didn't wipe away his tears as Mike continued to cry. and he thought his bones were breaking and bending back together, and his nerves were on fire, and he thought that everything that was Michael Afton had been stripped bare, laid on the ground and trampled on. Not to say the things that he truly feels, and not the words of someone who kneels. I'm fixing it, Dad said, seemingly to himself, walking about the garage, ignoring Mike's cries of pain. He began maniacally laughing, pulling at his hair, doubling over with his maddened chuckles. I'm fixing it! He looked to the sky and pointed, as if challenging God himself. Do you hear that, Clara? I am bloody fixing it! I am fixing the monster. And I am gonna drag you back here! Do you hear me? The record shows... Mike sobbed. He missed everyone so much. He didn't have anyone. He looked at his band-aid and felt the ghost of Jeremy's fingers on his leg, and he thought that he really wanted to kiss his only friend in the world. And the feeling felt so gross, but at the same time it was his only comfort, because Jeremy Fitzgerald was the only person Michael Afton hadn't broken. I took the blows. Mike was panting. His veins glowed a bright purple. And then it was over. He was matted in sweat. He sobbed, the rag falling from his mouth. Dad, he choked out. I'm sorry. He didn't know why he was apologizing, but he knew he should. He always had to apologize. He always did. Michael, Dad crooned. And he was still laughing, his movements like a puppet being jerked around by a manic puppeteer. And did it my way. Dad sang along with the recording, and he released Mike from his bindings, and Mike fell onto the floor, heaving, and he vomited there, almost falling into it. But Dad grabbed his hair and jerked him upwards, staring into his eyes. Mike caught his own reflection in his father's eyes, and Mike's eyes were purple. And just for a second, Mike began screaming and crying and thrashing, and Dad released him, observing him like a scientist observed a rat. Dad, I'm scared. I know, Michael. Dad stooped down low, removing his leather gloves, and he gently stroked Mike's hair, almost lovingly, but entirely methodically, like an alien acting like a human, trying to mimic how a father cared for a son. She lost her dog, you know. Little Susie lost her dog, and I told her I'd help her find it. I bludgeoned her until she couldn't move, and then I choked her to death with my bare hands. And Mike, Christ, I feel so fucking brilliant. I finally feel free. I'm finally happy again. No, not again. No. I'm simply, finally, happy, Mike. Mike wanted to be happy for Dad. He really did. But he was so scared. And he didn't know what Dad had done to him. Dad must have noticed his trepidation. So he smiled and said, "You've got remnant in you, Mike. You're gonna live forever now." "I don't want to live forever, Dad. I love you, Dad," Mike said. because it was the only true thing he knew. And he writhed on the floor, long after Dad left him there. A few weeks later, while everyone was lamenting over Susie, Mike heard someone say, "And now Jeremy's gone too." Jeremy? Mike raced through the school. His friend wasn't in the cafeteria, nor in the yard, nor in any of their classes. After school, Mike sprinted away from the school, and oh my God, he felt so good. He felt like a superhero, running without breaking a sweat, all reaching for breath. And he didn't want to be immortal, but this didn't feel too bad either. Into Jeremy's house. He pounded his fist on the door until it swung open, and thank God, thank every God that didn't exist. Jeremy was there. "Hey, man, sorry I skipped, because I think I got the flu." Mike interjected him by wrapping his arms around Jeremy and hugging him tight. And he didn't cry. He couldn't, because he was so happy. And he felt awful for feeling happy. Because this meant that little Jeremy, a few grades below him, had been killed by William Afton. But Mike couldn't find it in him to care, because his Jeremy was alive. And Mike didn't know what being in love felt like, and how pathetic it was to be in love with someone you had only known for a couple of months. But his heart finally felt full. And he held Jeremy so tight, and he never wanted to ever let go. And he understood Dad so well now. Because if he lost Jeremy, he'd inject himself over and over with the remnant until his own soul broke, just so he could bring back his best friend. And now, Michael Afton was doomed to live forever. But at least now, he wasn't quite alone.